I didn't plan to expose anyone that day. I wasn't looking for revenge, or a big movie moment, or even an apology. I just wanted to get through the weekly stand-up without my hands shaking. If you've ever carried grief into an office, you know the drill. Badge in, nod to security, coffee that tastes like burnt almonds, the hum of HVAC louder than your thoughts. You breathe, you smile, you pretend you slept. My name is Josh. I sit 6 rows back from the corner windows, 2 seats from the dying ficus, and I'm the guy who builds the reports everyone else uses to look smart. Most days, I'm invisible by choice. That Tuesday, I tried to be invisible and failed. Miguel joined our team 3 weeks earlier. Sales operations, hired from a competitor with a resume that read like a pep talk. Relationship builder, rainmaker, bilingual. In person, he was the kind of charming that makes receptionists laugh and managers forgive late deliverables. He wore cologne that arrived 5 seconds before he did, and suits that were just a little too tight in the chest. He shook hands like he was attaching a leash. The first time he saw my dashboard, he said, This is great, man. And then to the room with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, we finally have something usable. The meeting room we call Austin felt like a refrigerated box with a TV. The screen blinked, Teams avatars lined up like postage stamps, and our director asked me to walk through the churn model. I stood, clicked, started my quiet spiel about cohorts and retention curves. At the far end of the table, Miguel leaned toward Karen from marketing and said something soft. Not for me, not for the room. Karen didn't react. Maybe she didn't hear him. I did. My ears don't miss much when I'm nervous. He kept his face pleasant and spoke in a tone people use for compliments. The room laughed at a joke I didn't catch. I kept going. Numbers don't care if you're liked. When you spend long enough avoiding the center of attention, you learn to count details instead. I counted pen clicks. I counted how often the projector flickered. I counted the way Miguel's eyes slid off me like I was furniture. Little things stack. At the end of the meeting, he clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to tilt me forward and told the room, Josh is our quiet genius, like he'd discovered me on a shelf at Costco. People laughed again. I smiled and sat. No one warned me about the kitchen. It's where the company drops all pretense. Microwaves beeping, someone's tuna, weekend stories loud enough to matter. I was rinsing my mug when Miguel drifted in with a couple of the SDRs, casual as smoke. He leaned against the counter, phone face down, and told a story about a client dinner. He's good at stories. The SDRs nodded, laughed in the right places, waited for punchlines. I was the fridge door, the wall clock, the sound of water. He lowered his voice at the end and said something quick that wasn't for them. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to know whether I caught it. The SDRs didn't react. They were scrolling or pretending to be. I dried my mug and went back to my desk. If you've never been talked over in a language people assume you don't understand, it feels like walking past a window and seeing your own reflection flinch. At 2:10, the calendar invite hit. Q2 forecast review. External. That meant suits, clean slides, and someone reminding me not to be too in the weeds. I rewrote my deck to be picture first, number second, practiced phrasing that sounded like I'd rehearsed it with a human. When I get anxious, I rewrite sentences until they stop wobbling. The day slid by in pieces, Slack, VLOOKUPs, someone's birthday cupcakes. Miguel stopped by my cube to ask for just a quick pull on lead velocity that would take an hour. He stood too close, the way people do when they want you to say yes. I said I'd try. He smiled, wide and easy. You're a lifesaver, bro. He said bro like it was a downgrade. I left at 6 because there was nothing to be gained by staying later. The sun turned the parking lot into a mirror. On the drive home, the radio delivered bad news and weather in the same breath. I made dinner that tasted like obligation, checked my phone too many times for messages that wouldn't come, and opened the deck again. It felt like homework assigned by a teacher who liked me, but didn't think I was interesting. Sometime after 10, I stopped pretending I wasn't rehearsing aloud and just did it. The walls didn't mind. People think you remember the big lines from days that matter. Mostly you remember the small ones. The next morning, someone beat me to the good coffee and left grounds on the counter like confetti. Someone else propped open the door to Austin with a stack of branded notebooks. When I plugged in my laptop, the HDMI fought me like always, and then surrendered. Karen whispered that the client was number sensitive, and that I should keep it high level, but specific. I nodded like that was a normal request. Miguel arrived late, smiling like he'd already won something, and took the chair with the best sightline to the client's camera. He didn't bring a notebook. You can tell who holds power in a room by who chooses silence. Our director went first, all energy and welcome. I followed. Slide 1, slide 2. Draw a clean path from optimism to reality. I don't like stagey sentences, but the deck wanted a few. The client asked smart questions. I answered slowly, not because I didn't know, but because speed makes people suspicious. The room's temperature set somewhere between museum and meat locker. I heard the HVAC kick, the mouse click from the far end of the table, the faint, steady buzz of someone's phone against a portfolio. I heard, even while speaking, the drift of a comment that wasn't for me. The rhythm of it was familiar, praise in English, something else in the seam between, words passing like a note in class. I kept the numbers moving. We wrapped within the hour. Cameras clicked off. People exhaled. Our director said, "Good job," like it was currency, and shook hands no one needed. The client left the call with a polite wave. Chairs scraped, cords unplugged. The room swelled with relief that looked like conversation. I started packing cables, wrapping them the way IT likes. Neat loops, no kinks. A small order in a day full of static. Miguel tossed me a grin that made me feel like a helpful appliance. Back at my desk, the afternoon turned into its usual mess. Requests sprouted. Every quick question had a tail. I don't know when exactly I started writing things down that didn't belong in a spreadsheet. Phrases, offhanded comments, the way certain people laugh. Maybe it was after the second kitchen incident. Maybe it was because I learned to hang on to proof when my life turned into paperwork the year my father got sick. Either way, I kept a plain text file open behind my dashboards, a trivial window among giant ones, where I recorded nothing important. It made me feel steady. Before 5, HR sent a company-wide reminder about the code of conduct, boilerplate with a friendly subject line. The email landed, sat, and disappeared under the pile like everything else. No one read those unless they had to. I clicked it anyway, more out of muscle memory than interest, and scrolled past paragraphs about harassment, respectful workplace, reporting. During the read, I felt nothing. After, I felt the way you feel when you finally notice a low battery icon. I stayed late to finish the pull Miguel needed. It came out clean. I dropped the file into his Slack and was packing my bag when he appeared again in the aisle. Casual, grateful in the way people are when you become the path of least resistance. "You saved me," he said. I told him it was fine. He added a compliment about my English presentations. He said it lightly, like English was an ornament. I said thanks. He made one more comment that wasn't meant to stick to me and walked away, whistling something that didn't have a tune. The office lights cut to half, a timer I'd never bothered to learn the schedule for. I shut down my monitor and watched my reflection fade. On the way out, the elevator stopped at the second floor and took on a group from legal, laughing like the day had ended on their terms. I stood at the back with my badge and my quiet. In the lobby, the guard nodded the way he always does, the way you nod to people who have become part of your background. Outside, the air felt like warm water. I thought about saying something the next day and then didn't. I'm not proud of how long I waited. I told myself I was being professional, that I was protecting my job, that making a scene helps no one. It's funny how easily you can rename fear if you pick the right synonyms. That night I set my alarm for an hour earlier and ironed a shirt that didn't need ironing. I put my name on the bottom of my slides, like that would make them mine. I wrote a sentence in the notes field I'd never put in a deck before. Finish calmly. It looked like a command. It felt like a promise. I slept badly and woke before my alarm anyway. In the mirror, I looked like someone who hadn't yet decided what to do. I brewed coffee that tasted the way that office coffee pretends to taste, and drove in before the sun made the building glow. Security wasn't at the desk yet. The lights on my floor were full bright, humming. I swiped in, sat down, and opened the deck. The cursor blinked where I'd left it. I stared back until it meant nothing at all. I wish I could say I snapped right then, that some switch flipped, and I decided to stand up for myself. But the truth is, I didn't. Not yet. Because humiliation doesn't always arrive in explosions. Sometimes it's slow, polite, and wears a smile. The second week after the presentation, Miguel had already turned into the office's gravity well. You know the type. His jokes filled the silence. His voice carried through partitions, and every sentence ended like a punchline, waiting for applause. People orbited him. Even managers laughed at things they didn't quite understand. I wasn't jealous. I just noticed. The way you notice a sound you can't unhear. It started in the small meetings. Comments in Spanish. Quick, rhythmic, playful on the surface. Most people laughed because laughter is safer than asking what was said. But I understood every word. El gringo no tiene idea. The white guy has no clue. Mira su cara. Look at his face. Lento pero obediente. Slow but obedient. I'd sit there taking notes, pretending not to notice. I'd spent half my childhood visiting my abuela in San Antonio, translating for neighbors who didn't trust doctors. My Spanish wasn't perfect, but it was fluent enough to bleed. At first, I told myself it wasn't worth it. It's easier to be the guy who takes it, especially when you've built a life on not reacting. My father used to say, control is power. But control, I learned, can also be a cage. By Wednesday, Miguel's little audience had grown. 2 junior analysts, both trying to impress him, had picked up on his tone. Even if they didn't know what they were repeating, they'd mimic his accent, throw out random Spanish phrases after meetings. Gracias, jefe, they'd laugh, slapping each other's backs. I'd force a smile. You learn to measure silence by degrees. There's the silence of confusion, the silence of discomfort, and then there's the silence of being watched. That week I lived in all 3. On Thursday, during a lunch break, I overheard him near the break room again. His voice carried. Confident, sharp. No wonder they keep him around. He's the cheap model. Doesn't ask questions, just works. A beat of laughter, then softer in Spanish. Gringo tonto. That one landed. I didn't look up from my laptop. I didn't need to. I saved the file I'd been working on, closed it, and opened the small notepad I'd been keeping. One more line. Time. Date. Words. It wasn't about revenge then. It was about proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that it was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. The line between anger and exhaustion blurred. I kept hearing his voice replaying in my head, the way he said tonto, dragging the word just enough to make it sting. When I got to work Friday morning, I decided to stop reacting like a victim. Not by confronting him, not yet, but by watching. I started paying attention to the little things. Who laughed, who avoided eye contact, who looked uncomfortable. Karen had stopped meeting my eyes entirely. Our director, James, had that fake neutral smile he used when he didn't want to get involved. Invisibility had always been my shield, but now it made me a ghost, haunting my own workplace. That afternoon, we had another client prep. Miguel came in late, again phone in hand. He looked at me, smirked, then turned to the intern beside him and whispered something in Spanish. I caught it. Everyone else didn't. Se cree importante solo porque usa traje. He thinks he's important just because he wears a suit. Something in me cracked, but quietly. I smiled back. That threw him off. What? He asked. Nothing, I said. Just funny you said that. He froze for a split second, then recovered, laughing. What do you mean? Oh, just how clear your accent gets when you're nervous. It was a small jab, but it landed. His laugh faltered. The others didn't understand what just happened, but they felt it. The air changed, slightly. Later that day, Karen stopped by my desk. Everything okay between you two? She asked, voice low. Why? I don't know. The way you looked at him in the meeting, it felt different. Maybe I'm just done pretending, I said. She blinked, not sure what that meant. I wasn't sure either. That weekend I couldn't let it go. The way he looked when I said that, like a mirror had turned toward him, it stayed with me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. Monday morning came fast. Another week, another meeting, another opportunity for him to perform. I walked in early, set up the projector, made sure my mic was working. Miguel strolled in late, like always. Halfway through the meeting, he leaned over to whisper to one of the analysts again. And that's when he said it. Este tipo no sirve para nada. This guy's useless, but that was just the beginning. Something in my chest steadied instead of breaking. I looked up, locked eyes with him, and smiled. Not politely, not nervously, just calm. He blinked, unsure why. The room carried on like nothing happened. But for me, that was the moment I stopped pretending not to understand. That night, I went home, opened a new folder on my desktop, and renamed it Insurance. Inside, I saved the audio from the meeting room recording system. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost him everything. The next Monday felt different. Not louder, not angrier, just sharper. Every sound had an edge. The printer, the elevator chime, even the hum of the fluorescent lights. I could feel the weight of what I knew pressing against the calm I wore like armor. When I walked into the office, Miguel was already there, laughing with two account managers near the coffee machine. His laughter had that effortless arrogance, the kind that makes you want to look away so he doesn't see your reaction. I didn't look away. He noticed. His grin flickered for half a second, then returned, bigger, a show of power. By the time we filed into the conference room for the client presentation, I'd already decided. I wasn't waiting anymore. The client was from Miami, a bilingual team of 3. Sharp, efficient, switching naturally between English and Spanish as they prepped their materials. I caught Miguel's smirk when they started. He thought this was his element. Our director, James, began with his usual energy. Okay, team, let's keep it tight and clear today. Josh, you'll handle the analytics section. I stood, opened the slide deck, and started. Calm, measured, exact. The numbers spoke for themselves. Halfway through, while I was explaining retention variance, I heard it again, that whispering rhythm. Miguel leaned slightly toward one of the Miami reps and said in Spanish, Este tipo no tiene ni idea de lo que dice. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. It was quiet, just enough for his little joke to stay safe behind a language barrier. But not safe enough. I stopped. Not abruptly, just a half-second pause. Enough for silence to fill the space between words. Then I smiled, and without changing tone, without raising my voice, I switched languages. Perdón, Miguel, I said softly, still looking at the screen. ¿Quieres explicar tú esta parte? Ya que según tú, no tengo ni idea. Sorry, Miguel. Would you like to explain this part? Since apparently I have no idea what I'm talking about. The room froze. The Miami clients looked up, instantly alert. James blinked like he'd missed a page of the script. Miguel's grin collapsed into confusion, then panic. He opened his mouth, searching for a joke, but nothing came out. I kept going, smoothly, fluently, walking through the rest of the data in Spanish. Every number, every term, every slide. I could feel the air change around me, that mix of awe and discomfort people get when they realize they've underestimated you. When I finished, the Miami lead clapped once, quietly. Perfecto, he said. That was very clear. Thank you, Josh. I nodded. Of course. Miguel didn't speak again for the rest of the meeting. When it ended, people filed out awkwardly, pretending to check emails, pretending not to have witnessed a social collapse. Miguel stayed behind, face pale, jaw tight. He waited until the door closed, then leaned in. "You made me look bad," he hissed. I looked at him calm. "You did that yourself. You think you're smart because you speak Spanish?" I tilted my head slightly. "No, I think I'm smart because I didn't need to prove it until now." He stepped back, breathing hard, but before he could say more, James walked in. "Good work today, Josh," he said, glancing between us. "Clients loved it." Miguel, not sure what that was about, but let's keep it professional, okay? Miguel forced a laugh. "Of course." When he left, I sat for a moment, letting the adrenaline settle. My hands were steady. My pulse wasn't. That night, I uploaded the meeting audio to the insurance folder. Clean. Perfectly clear. Every word of his insult, followed by my reply. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. The next morning, Miguel avoided me. No jokes, no fake smiles, no bro. By noon, he'd reverted to quiet hostility, whispers in the hallway, subtle sabotage on shared files. He thought if he couldn't humiliate me in front of others, he'd chip away from the shadows. That's when I went to HR. I didn't make a scene. I booked a private slot with our HR manager, Amanda, and walked her through the recordings. I told her everything. The weeks of comments, the language, the context. She listened in silence, arms folded, the professional kind of empathy that hides calculation. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I opened the folder, played the clip. Miguel's voice filled the small office. Clear, mocking, cruel. Then my voice, calm, surgical. Amanda exhaled. "We'll handle this." When I left her office, the hallway felt wider, lighter. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 2 days later, an email pinged, HR follow-up, confidential, mandatory meeting, 10 a.m. I showed up on time. Miguel was already there, sitting stiffly across the table. Amanda and James flanked us like referees. Miguel tried to smile. "Just a misunderstanding," he said. Amanda's face didn't move. "Then I'm sure you'll have no problem explaining these." She played the audio. Miguel's complexion went gray. He looked at me, then at James, then down at the table. "Context," he said. "It was just joking around." "About your coworker in a language you assumed he didn't understand?" Amanda said flatly. "That's not a joke. That's harassment." He tried to pivot, but she'd already printed transcripts. By the time the meeting ended, HR had what they needed. He left the office that day without saying a word. But that was only part of it. The following week, our client from Miami called James directly. Apparently, Miguel had reached out to them privately after his HR meeting, trying to save face. What he didn't realize was that the lead from Miami had also been bilingual enough to catch everything he'd said in that first meeting. They filed a complaint. By Friday, his badge stopped working. I didn't celebrate, didn't even smile. I just sat at my desk, sipping coffee, watching the sunlight move across the floor. They thought I was done. I wasn't. The office felt different after he was gone. Quieter, cleaner somehow. Like someone had turned down a frequency only I'd been able to hear. No more laughter that lingered too long. No more whispers that bent the air behind me. Just the low hum of keyboards, the clink of coffee mugs, and the occasional sound of someone breathing relief. Miguel's desk sat empty for a few days, his monitor dark, his chair slightly askew. HR didn't make an announcement, but everyone knew. They always know. The empty space said enough. By the next week, his nameplate was gone, his Slack profile deleted, his emails bounced back with an auto response. "This account is no longer active." No one mentioned it. That's how offices grieve, with silence. Karen was the first to approach me. She didn't bring up what happened, just left a small post-it on my desk that said, "Good presentation last week." I looked up and she smiled. Small, apologetic. I nodded. That was all it took. People started treating me differently, but not in the way you might think. There wasn't awe or sympathy, just a quiet recalibration, like they were remembering that I existed. James stopped by my cubicle 2 days later. "You did the right thing," he said. It sounded rehearsed, the way managers talk when HR writes the subtext for them. "We, value professionalism." "Sure," I said. "So do I." He smiled awkwardly, patted the edge of my desk, and left. For the first time in months, I worked without checking over my shoulder. My code ran clean, my reports got approved without red lines, and no one accidentally muted my mic in meetings. I'd thought victory would feel louder, like a scene from a movie, confetti and applause. But it wasn't. It was calm, steady. The real moment didn't come until a week later. We had another client call, same team from Miami. The lead, Sophia, smiled when she saw me on camera. "Josh," she said, "we heard about what happened." I nodded carefully. "Yeah, it's been handled." She tilted her head, her expression warm but serious. "Good. For what it's worth, what you did in that meeting, switching languages so gracefully, that wasn't just professional, it was powerful." I thanked her. She paused for a beat, then added quietly, "He made the same mistake with us before he left. Thought we didn't understand either." "What did he say?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Enough." We moved on to business, but that word, enough, stayed with me. That evening I walked out of the building later than usual. The parking lot was mostly empty, the sun low, throwing long orange shadows over the concrete. I stood there for a while, listening to the steady chirp of summer insects. The same world, same job, same gray building, but inside me, something had shifted. You don't realize how heavy something's been until it's gone. I thought about my father, about control, about silence, how he always said that staying quiet was strength. He was right, in part, but strength, I'd learned, isn't silence. It's choosing when to break it. In the following days, people came and went. Projects moved forward, and the rhythm of the office repaired itself. The only real difference was me. I still kept my insurance folder on the desktop, not out of fear, but as a reminder of who I used to be, of the version of myself that took hits quietly, thinking that peace meant shrinking. Peace isn't silence. It's the absence of fear. Weeks later, when the new hire started, a soft-spoken analyst named Diego, he stopped by my desk on his first day, nervously asking for help connecting to the database. I showed him the basics, explained a few shortcuts, and when he thanked me in Spanish, I smiled. "De nada," I said. He froze, surprised. "Oh, hablas español?" "Yeah," I said. "I always have." He grinned. "Good to know." "Yeah," I replied, closing my laptop. "It is." He walked away, and I sat there for a moment, watching the sunlight slide across the rows of monitors, the slow dance of dust in the air. No drama, no noise, just stillness. It's funny. People expect revenge to be loud, explosive, satisfying in some cinematic way, but sometimes it's quiet. It's the silence that follows when the noise is gone. That day, as I left the office, I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt balanced. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to raise my voice. I just needed to be understood.